Revenge office stories. The CEO's son publicly humiliated me, calling me incompetent as he literally shoved me out of my own office. He really thought he'd won. What he didn't know was that, from my laptop at home, I had found his one critical mistake. And with a single, satisfying click, I was about to dismantle his entire future. My name is Alexis. For the better part of a decade, I was the senior project manager at a tech firm called Innovatech. I wasn't a rock star coder or some visionary sales guru. My talent was quieter. I was the person who made sure the trains ran on time because I was the one who made sure the tracks were laid on solid ground to begin with. Meticulous, dedicated, and maybe a little too loyal, that was me. I'd been with the company for 7 years, starting from a junior role and climbing the ladder, rung by steady rung. My biggest achievement, the one that earned me that office, was a beast of a project we called Chimera. It was a full-scale integration of 3 ancient legacy systems that everyone, and I mean everyone, said was impossible. For 18 months, I lived and breathed that project. I mapped out every dependency, every API call, every single point of failure. The nights were long, fueled by stale coffee and the sheer stubbornness of not wanting to fail. When we finally launched it, not only did it work, but it saved the company millions and helped us land our biggest clients ever. As a reward, I was given one of the few private offices on the 4th floor. It wasn't a corner office with a panoramic view. It didn't have a mahogany desk, but it was mine. It had a door that closed, separating me from the chaos of the open floor. It had a single, large window that looked out over an old oak tree. That office was my sanctuary. It was a real symbol of my contribution, a quiet space where I could focus and do the deep work that Chimera proved I was capable of. It wasn't just a room, it was a sign of respect. The company was the brainchild of Mr. Sterling, the CEO, an old-school titan who built Innovatech from a garage into a respectable company. In the early days, he knew every employee by name. He'd walk the floors and ask about your projects, his eyes sharp and analytical. He'd personally approved my promotion and given me the office, shaking my hand and saying, "This is what happens when you solve the puzzles no one else will, Alexis. Well done." But in the last year or so, he'd become distant. The fire seemed to have dimmed. He was still the king, but he wasn't really watching his kingdom anymore. And into that power vacuum stepped his son, Brent Sterling. Brent showed up at Innovatech not with a resume, but with a title, Vice President of Special Projects. He had a fresh MBA from a university, his dad probably donated a building to, and 0 real-world experience. He was tall, good-looking in a generic sort of way, and carried himself with the confidence of a man who'd never faced a single consequence in his life. His special projects were just vague, buzzword-filled ideas that never produced anything, but always generated a lot of meetings. He'd stride into conference rooms 10 minutes late, holding a giant smoothie, and interrupt detailed technical discussions with nonsense like, "We just need to synergize our deliverables and pivot to a more disruptive paradigm." He talked like a walking TED Talk. He was famous for hovering near a team that was close to a breakthrough, only to swoop in during the presentation to the CEO and use the word "we" as if he'd been there all along. My first really unpleasant run-in with him was about a month before everything went down. He'd called a last-minute ideation session for a new app and hijacked my project team, the same people I'd led through Chimera. I sat quietly while he scribbled nonsensical user flows on a whiteboard. After 20 minutes, I politely raised my hand. "Brent," I said, keeping my voice even, "the core feature you're describing would require a complete overhaul of our back-end authentication. We'd be looking at a 6-month delay to our current roadmap just to build the foundation for this." He stopped and gave me this slow, condescending smile. "Alexis, right? The project manager." He said project manager like it was a cute hobby. See, that's legacy thinking. We can't be constrained by what is. We have to focus on what could be. You worry about the spreadsheets. Let the visionaries handle the vision. He turned back to the whiteboard, and that was that. My warning, based on actual experience, was dismissed. My team looked at me with a mix of pity and frustration. That was Brent. All style, zero substance. But I just filed it away. He was an annoyance, a corporate prince. I had real work to do. I really underestimated how dangerous a fool with power could be. It happened on a Tuesday morning. I was in my zone, deep into prep for a major quarterly review with the board. My desk was covered in printouts and charts. My door was open as usual so my team could pop in. I didn't even hear him approach. The first sign was a shadow falling over my desk. I looked up, and there was Brent standing in my doorway. But he wasn't alone. Flanking him were two guys from maintenance, holding empty cardboard boxes. Brent was wearing this infuriatingly smug grin, the kind a cat gets right before it knocks a glass off a table. He didn't knock. He just leaned against the doorframe, looked around my office, and said, "Yep, this will do." Then he looked at me. "Hey, Alexis, we're gonna need this space." I just blinked at him. "Sorry? I'm a little busy, Brent. What's this about?" His grin widened. He stepped into my office, his expensive cologne invading my space. He spoke loudly, making sure my entire team out in the open plan area could hear. He was putting on a show. "Dad and I were talking," he announced, gesturing vaguely toward the executive floor. He agrees that I need an office with a better view to really inspire innovation. This one has good light. So you're being relocated. The words just hung there. I felt a hot flush creep up my neck. Relocated? Brent, this is my office. My board presentation is in 2 days. All my materials are right here. He chuckled. "Yeah, about that. They'll move your stuff." He pointed at the maintenance guys, who were now looking extremely uncomfortable. "They're going to pack you up and move you to the open plan area. There's a hot desk free next to the interns. Try not to get too distracted." The humiliation was a physical thing. To be kicked out was one thing. To be kicked out for good light was another. But to have it done so publicly, in front of the team that respected me. He wasn't just taking my office. He was showing everyone I didn't matter. I stood up. "You can't be serious," I said, my voice tight with rage. "You can't just kick me out." And then he delivered the final blow. He stepped closer, lowered his voice just enough so it felt like a personal insult, but was still loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Besides," he said, his eyes glinting, "a project manager doesn't really need an office. You're more of a coordinator, right? Just keeping track of things. This space is for actual strategy." He looked past me and winked at a junior developer on my team, a kid I had personally mentored. That was it. He had just reduced 7 years of dedication, my career, my biggest success, down to just keeping track of things. I was speechless, just frozen in white-hot anger. Brent saw the look on my face and took it as, "Talk to HR if you have a problem," he said with a shrug, making it clear HR wouldn't do a thing. "Now, if you'll excuse me." He made a little shooing motion with his hand, like I was a stray cat. He literally gestured for me to get out of my own office. As if on cue, the maintenance workers stepped forward, avoiding my eyes, and started dumping my papers, my awards, my family photos into a cardboard box. All of it tossed together like trash. I couldn't watch. I turned, my face burning, and walked out of the office I had earned. I walked past my team, who were all suddenly staring intently at their screens, pretending not to see. Their silence was deafening. I didn't go to HR. I went straight to the hot desk, an impersonal slab of plastic in the loudest part of the floor. No window, no door, no dignity. A few minutes later, one of the workers dropped the box next to me. It felt like a coffin for my career. I just sat there, surrounded by noise, and felt this coldness spread through me. He hadn't just taken my office. He had tried to take my value, and in the chilling quiet of my own head, I made a promise. He would not get away with it. The rest of that day was a blur. I couldn't focus. The noise of the open floor, once just background hum, was now a grating roar. Every laugh, every ringing phone felt like a personal taunt. I pretended to work, but I was just replaying the humiliation over and over in my head. I left at 5:01 p.m. sharp. That night was hell. I paced my living room like a caged animal, furious and helpless. I must have drafted and deleted a dozen resignation letters. I fantasized about storming into Mr. Sterling's office, but I knew how that would end. It'd be my word against his son's. Quitting felt like surrender. Letting him win was simply not an option. By morning, the rage had cooled into something far more dangerous, a cold, logical resolve. He had underestimated me. He saw me as a glorified administrator. He had no idea that my real strength wasn't just managing projects, but understanding systems. And a company is just a complex system of people, processes, and data. Every system has vulnerabilities. I wasn't a hacker. I wasn't going to do anything illegal. That would be clumsy. My revenge had to be elegant, surgical, and completely deniable. I needed to find a flaw in the system that no one else had noticed. As a senior PM, I had high-level, read-only access to huge parts of the company's digital architecture. I knew where the skeletons were buried because I'd helped build the closets. For the next 2 nights, I went home from my noisy hot desk and hunted. I didn't search for dirt on Brent. Too obvious. Instead, I reviewed old project documentation. I was combing through the archives of Project Nightfall, a mail server migration I'd led 2 years ago. It had been a delicate operation, and that's when it hit me. To make sure no critical emails from the CEO were lost during the switch, Mr. Sterling had insisted on a special failsafe, a server-side rule that copied any email sent to his work address to a secondary, personal email. The protocol was clear. This rule was temporary and was supposed to be disabled 1 week after the migration. I remembered filing the ticket myself to have the rule deleted. My curiosity kicked in. I navigated through the system logs, all with my legitimate access. I found the original ticket. It was marked resolved. But out of sheer professional habit, I went deeper. I pulled up the actual mail server configuration files. My breath caught. The ticket was closed, sure, but the rule itself? It was still active. A forgotten switch, left in the on position. An IT director who liked to close tickets early had, in his laziness, left a back door wide open. This was interesting, but it wasn't enough. Then I remembered something about Brent. He was arrogant about tech security, always bragging about using his personal phone and laptop for work because it made him more agile. This was a huge no-no at Innovatech. We all sat through annual training on why you never, ever conduct company business on unsecured devices. A hypothesis started to form. What if Brent, knowing his dad was slow to respond to his official email, sometimes used that personal address to get his attention? I didn't need to break into anyone's inbox to find out. My access let me see official project communications. I started searching cross-referencing emails involving Brent with project keywords. It took hours, but then at 1:37 a.m. I found it. It was an email thread from a month ago. Subject: Acquisition Target Analysis. Brent had emailed his father's personal address directly. In it, he complained about a competitor and attached a draft counterproposal he claimed he created. "Dad," he wrote, "check this out. A much more aggressive strategy. Let me know what you think before I present it to the board." With trembling hands, I opened the attachment. My blood ran cold. The draft was a nearly word-for-word copy of a confidential plan from a brilliant little startup we'd been considering acquiring. I knew this because I had managed the secure data room for that due diligence. Brent had stolen their intellectual property, slapped his name on it, and was trying to pass it off as his own genius idea. And the idiot had emailed the proof to an unsecured personal address. But here's the final piece that turned this into a corporate time bomb. The forwarding rule wasn't just a simple forward. It was a fail-safe distribution list. A copy of every email sent to Mr. Sterling's work address. and by extension, the ones Brent sent to the personal one, was also sent to the general inbox of our company's external law firm and, crucially, to a dedicated compliance archive managed by our third-party external auditors. It was a ghost archive, a repository collecting data no one knew was still being collected. The lawyers and auditors would never look at this data unless they were told to. It was just sitting there, the plan snapped into place, beautiful and brutal. I wouldn't have to leak anything. I wouldn't have to accuse anyone. I wouldn't have to be a whistleblower. All I had to do was draw them a map. I would send a single anonymous email from an encrypted, disposable address to the lead partner at the auditing firm. It would be brief and professional. It wouldn't mention Brent or my stolen office. It would simply suggest as an anonymous tipster that they might want to review their own compliance archive connected to Innovatech, referencing the old Project Nightfall list. I'd suggest they look at a specific date range and search for keywords related to potential intellectual property compliance irregularities. I wasn't firing a missile. I was just pointing a telescope at a star that was about to go supernova. They'd be investigating a lead using their own data on their own servers. It would be completely untraceable to me. It was perfect. Friday night. The only sound in my apartment was the quiet hum of my laptop. The email was drafted. It was a masterpiece of corporate sterility, dry, professional, and completely devoid of personality. The sender was a random address from a secure email provider, an untraceable ghost in the machine. My finger hovered over the mouse, the cursor blinking over the send button. My heart was hammering. This was it, the point of no return. A part of me, the rule follower, screamed in protest. Was I really about to do this? Then I saw Brent's face in my mind, that smug, entitled smirk. I heard his voice. You're more of a coordinator, right? I saw the walk of shame, the pitying looks, the cardboard box. The anger, which had cooled into hard resolve, now flared up and burned away my last doubt. He mistook my competence for passivity. He mistook my dedication for weakness. He thought he was untouchable. I was about to teach him, and the company that enabled him, a very permanent lesson. I took a slow, deep breath. My hand was steady. My mind was clear. And then with a single, satisfying click, I sent it. The page refreshed. The message was gone. The fuse was lit. The anonymous tip, a digital seed, was now flying through the internet to the one person who could bring the whole rotten structure down. All it contained was a map that led directly to the proof of Brent's fraud, sitting undiscovered on the auditor's own servers. The next week was an exercise in supreme self-control. It was unnervingly quiet. I went to work at my noisy desk, put on headphones, and buried myself in my presentation. I acted like nothing was wrong. Brent would saunter past my desk on his way to my old office, sometimes shooting me a pitying smirk. He was enjoying his victory. I let him. I felt a strange sense of calm. I had launched the arrow. Now I just had to wait. The first tremor hit the following Wednesday. I saw Arthur Vance, the lead partner from the auditing firm, striding through our office. This was weird. Vance was a grim guy who only showed up for the final annual review. He, our chief legal officer, and the head of HR walked into the main conference room. The door closed. The blinds were drawn. They were in there for over 3 hours. By Thursday morning, it was a full-blown earthquake. An emergency, board members-only meeting was called. Whispers were flying. I got a message from a friend in legal. IP theft. Bad. Another from finance. Compliance breach. All hands on deck. Around noon, Brent was summoned to the boardroom. He swaggered in, looking more annoyed than concerned. He was in there for less than 10 minutes. When the door opened, he stumbled out. His face, usually flushed with arrogance, was white as a sheet. The smugness was gone, replaced by pure shock. He didn't go back to his new office. 2 security guards met him in the hallway. They escorted him to a desk in the open plan area, where a single, small cardboard box was waiting. The irony was so thick you could taste it. He had to do his own walk of shame, past the very same people who had witnessed my humiliation. But this time, nobody pretended not to look. Every single eye was on him. He was escorted out of the building, his badge deactivated before the elevator doors even closed. But the fallout didn't stop with Brent. The investigation uncovered Mr. Sterling's willful negligence. He knew Brent was using personal email for sensitive work and did nothing. He wasn't fired, but the board came down on him hard. He had to issue a company-wide apology for severe leadership and compliance failures and give up a huge chunk of his operational control. The old lion had been declawed. He seemed to age 10 years in a week. On the following Monday morning, the head of HR came to my desk, looking apologetic. She went on and on about the deeply unfortunate office reassignment incident, and then offered me my old office back, the one with the window and the oak tree. I smiled, a real relaxed smile. "Thank you for the offer," I said politely, "but it won't be necessary. I've accepted a position as Director of Project Management at your biggest competitor. They've been trying to recruit me for months. Turns out they place a very high value on people who can manage complex systems." I watched the color drain from her face as she realized the architect of their most profitable system was now going to the competition. The final, perfect checkmate. I didn't do it just to get an office back. I did it because competence should matter more than connections. Dedication should be rewarded, not trampled on by unearned privilege. Brent thought he could just push me aside. He never understood that in this world, power isn't always about who has the loudest voice. Sometimes, true power belongs to the quietest person in the room, the one who understands how things really work, the one who knows that an entire building can be brought down with a single, well-placed click. So, what do you think? Was the revenge justified, or did I go too far? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to like and subscribe for more tales of justice being served. It really helps the channel out. Walking out of that building for the last time, I didn't feel angry or even triumphant. I just felt peace. It wasn't a loud, messy victory. It was a quiet, clean, logical conclusion. The best kind of revenge, I've learned, is the one where you don't have to destroy your enemies. You just give them the rope and watch them tie their own noose. I just pointed them to where the rope was stored.